I love any solid axle four-wheel drive pickup truck, but the modern ones, they are just so awesome. All the creature comforts you could ever want in the cab to drive it every single day, and then the drivetrain to back it up if you ever have to put it to serious work. This is a great example. Ram 2500 3/4 ton pickup truck, Cummins turbo diesel underneath the hood. There is, however, one item that could just be a little bit better, and Yukon Gear and Axle is here to fix that. The issue that I'm referring to is with this item right here. This is called a unit bearing. This is a non-serviceable bearing assembly that connects the tire and wheel to the axle assembly and also connects the tire and wheel through the axle shaft to the differential. Now, the benefit of the unit bearing is it allows the driver to simply shift the truck into four-wheel drive and get that four-wheel drive driving those front tires and wheels without having to get out of the truck. The downfall is that 100% connection all the time means that we now have more wear and tear on the drivetrain components. Think about it. This truck has 185,000 miles on it. For all of its life, the tire's been turning, the axle shaft's been turning, the internals and the differential have been turning, front drive shaft has also been turning whenever you drive down the road. And if we're honest with ourselves, I'm gonna bet this thing has maybe been in four-wheel drive for 10% of its life. That means that we have way more wear and tear on the front end of this truck than we need. And if we could eliminate the unit bearing and convert this over to an older style hub that included a freewheeling or locking hub assembly, that would allow us to disconnect the tire and wheel from the axle shaft, therefore minimizing the wear and tear on our front end components and probably pick up a little bit of mileage because it's going to reduce the drag on those front tires and wheels. And like I said before, there is a way to do that, and it's by using a Yukon Spin Free Kit. The Spin Free Kit comes with everything that you are going to need to convert your unit bearing style axle over to an axle with serviceable bearings and a set of Yukon hardcore freewheeling hubs. First step is to remove the ABS sensor. It simply bolts into the top of the unit bearing on this particular model. Make sure you do not damage it when you remove it. So pull it straight out of the unit bearing and set it aside. Then you can unbolt the unit bearing from the knuckle. We do not need to disassemble the unit bearing from the axle shaft because we're not going to reuse this stub shaft. We're going to remove this outer stub and unit bearing as one piece. We're just going to basically blow the inner circlips off from this U-joint. The U-joint looks to be in really good shape. We'll inspect it, but I can see there's evidence of fresh grease right here, so I'm sure it's okay. And if you're going to reuse it, just take care, make sure you don't lose the actual needles that are inside that U-joint. All we got to do is pop these off. Okay. Want to make sure that you don't lose any of the needles inside the cups. Before you install your new outer shaft, this is a good time to once again inspect that U-joint. This one's in great shape, so we're just going to go ahead and reuse it and install it on the short side axle. Before installing the axle back into the truck, you need to install the dust shield and the spacers, as well as the seals. The bearing is then installed into the spindle, grease is applied, and then the seal is placed in after it. Make sure to coat the knuckle to spindle mating surface with some anti-seize. And the spindle can be installed onto the knuckle. This small aluminum block is going to hold your wheel speed sensor because this kit still retains full functionality of your anti-lock brake system. Press the wheel studs into the new hub, followed by the bearing races. Best tool for this is a bearing race driver. You know the race is seated when the bearing race driver jumps in your hand. Once the bearings are packed, they're put into the hub assembly and the seal is installed. Then we'll install the hub onto the spindle, along with the outer bearing. Make sure that the first spindle locking nut you install has the stud facing towards you. lock washer then goes on, and the pin on the nut that you just installed must go into one of the locking holes. If it doesn't line up right away, remove the washer and adjust the nut by backing it out until the pin lines up. Once the pin is locked into the washer, we'll hold it in place with the outer nut. Then the brake rotor and caliper assembly can be reinstalled. Check to make sure that your ABS line is clear from the rotor when it's all tightened down. The last thing to install is the Yukon Hardcore Locking Hub Kit. Starts with the spring seat, goes in. Then you want to put some grease on these outer splines, as well as on the shaft. Spring will go in. Spacer. Hub assembly. It's a little tricky. Kind of keep that spring in the, getting caught in the splines. Retaining housing goes in, followed by the last big circlip. Before you put the actual hub face on, you want to make sure to put a lot of grease on the ramps that are going to engage the freewheel and hub mechanism. You want to make sure that it's pointed towards the locked direction and make sure that the tabs are lined up. And with that, we have replaced the non-serviceable, constantly engaged unit bearing assembly with this fully rebuildable hub assembly with 2 tapered roller bearings. The only thing we'll ever have to do to this front end at this point is inspect those bearings and possibly repack them every 25 to 30,000 miles. But the big news is this. Right now it's acting just like it did when it came to the door. I am moving this rotor back and forth and I can feel the axle shaft drag inside that differential. I'm turning a whole bunch of stuff on this front end. All I have to do is flip this switch down to free, and now I am only turning the rotor and the rotor support. A lot less drag. This truck's ready for another 180,000 miles and probably gonna save a little bit of money on fuel in the process. Job like this, easy to do in your garage on a couple of jack stands, just need common hand tools. Little piece of advice, I bought them and didn't use them, and you should buy them as well, a set of axle joints. If you get the truck all torn apart and you find out that your axle joints are bad, it's gonna be no fun if your truck is sitting on jack stands in the garage. You gotta find out a way to get to the parts store. So go ahead and buy those and just have them just in case. I'll save them for another project because the ones in this truck, they look brand new. All I have to do now is do all of this work on the other side of the truck.